Mary Gladden Street.
Not yet, sorry.
Do you need a microphone over here?
Can everyone hear us?
Yeah, we can hear.
All right, looks like we are live on YouTube. So I'm going to call this meeting of the Climate Action Plan Committee to order for Monday, May 13th, 2024. President Darhoy.
Stapleton.
Gonzalez.
You, Councilor, for joining us remotely. Public comment. We received some public comment. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Are there any members of the public who want to address the Climate Action Committee? All right. Moving on, I'm going to turn it over to you for strategy. Oh, sorry, approval of the, I skipped right over that.
I move approval of the minutes from our March meeting.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Right.
All right. Now we're on to item 4, strategy EN12. Juliana.
All right, good morning. I'm actually going to pass this over to Marissa West and Luke Gonzalez. This is about the Salem Navigation Center upgrade.
And can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So thanks for letting me join. My name is Marissa West. I'm with Energy Trust of Oregon, and I worked with Luke to close out the incentives for the City of Salem Navigation Center project. We enrolled this project in 2021, right as you guys were sort of kicking off design. We were able to provide an early design assistance incentive of $2,500 to you guys, as well as our standard incentive route, which we have listed those energy efficient features. We have the data closet mini split, the commercial kitchen appliances such as the gas convection oven, the hot food holding cabinet, the dishwasher, and the ice maker, for a total of right around $4,700 in cash incentives to this project. And then also, you can see those sort of estimated energy cost savings. Those are just based on those incentives that we provided. So just those energy efficient measures. So of course, the project is probably saving a lot more energy, but that sort of gives you an idea of what we've calculated yearly, what you guys will save, annual energy cost savings.
Marissa, what's the data closet mini split? I know what the data closet is, but I don't know what a mini split is.
Yeah. So that's just a mini split. It's just an AC unit. So when you have a data closet, it gets hotter in there. So they provide that sort of mini split system. So it's got its own separate AC unit in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And any other questions for me? I just wanted to go over our, this is sort of a slide that we've created so that way we can sort of highlight the project moving forward. So if there's any questions, I'd love to answer those for you guys. And if not, I think Luke probably has something to say.
Yeah, thank you, Marissa. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I have one, if that's okay. What was the reasoning behind the gas oven versus going electric?
I think that would be a question for Luke and the project team. We don't make those kind of decisions for the project. We're just here to support where incentives are available and what's going to best, work for the project. But I do see a lot of gas convection ovens and these sort of larger commercial kitchens.
Yeah, and that was my question. I understand it more on the residential side, but I don't understand it in a commercial setting. So would love to understand that better.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I am by no means a commercial kitchen expert, but I could certainly ask the designers. My thinking is that, we had the service there. There's some convenience to it as far as it heating up quicker and being ready to go, so to speak, as opposed to an electric convection oven. But I'm not certain if there's any other reasons to that. I could certainly ask the folks that helped us design the kitchen. And I apologize if my connectivity is poor. I'm in Bend celebrating my big brother's 50th birthday. So I'm remote on a Wi-Fi connection that I know nothing about. So I hope I'm coming through clear.
You are, thank you. Yeah, if you could get back to us on those questions, that would be great.
Okay, I will look into that. And then one thing I wanted to ask Marissa is I don't see anything about lighting in this, and I can't remember on this project if we had any incentives for the LED lighting, or if that's just more par for the course these days. And so we do that and see an
Yeah.
energy savings as opposed to an incentive.
Mhm. Yeah, so then the lighting incentives that we have really decreased. Based on, I actually did a lighting calculator for this project, and you do have to reach a certain percentage better than code. And I think due to safety concerns and things like that, you guys were sort of right at that code minimum for kilowatt hours per square foot. So we weren't able to provide incentive for lighting, but you guys did go with LED fixtures. It's still very high efficient lighting that's going to last and save you guys money. It's just we are going above code is where we're going to provide those incentives.
Right. Okay. I would just wanted to make sure that that was mentioned and
Yes.
see
Yeah.
if the committee had any questions on that.
So I think what you're saying, Luke, is we did other energy efficient elements in this project. It just doesn't rise to the level of reaching an incentive, but that doesn't mean that there aren't good things that happened in addition to this list.
That's correct. Another one that's not highlighted on this slide is that we took steps in the electrical design to make the appurtenances required for a solar. If we ever wanted to do a solar addition to the roof, some of that equipment is in place. And so we put that in as part of this project, knowing that we had a roof replacement in the not too distant future. We stopped short of actually putting the panels up and making the system complete. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to do that work when we knew that the roof was going to need replacement within the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good context. Any other questions? This one? All right. Well, thank you for your presentation and congratulations to your brother for his birthday.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's he's pretty excited to have us all around him. So appreciate that.
You bet. Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll get back to the question. I'll try and get back to Juliana with a response to the question on the gas convection oven. So I'll follow up on that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, now we're on to strategy EN23, which is incentivize, implement small-scale renewable power microgrids in pipe micro hydroelectric generation. Jason Pulley.
Yeah. No. That's perfect. So we brought, I think it's a pretty exciting project to Juliana when she started it. It's something that Keith and I had looked at several times over many years, and it just seems to, it seemed to really align with the climate action plan, and the incentives that are available these days have really started to make this type of project affordable. So what we're talking about is hydropower potential. So if you know or don't know, right? So we have a water treatment plant at Guerin Island, which is just outside the city of Stayton. Water is transmitted through 2 transmission lines to the city of Turner, where it fills Franzen Reservoir. From Franzen Reservoir, it goes down the hill again through our Turner Control Flow Facility and into town. So what we're proposing is utilizing the existing head between Guerin Island and Franzen Reservoir to do a inline in conduit hydropower generator, and then that water feeds into Franzen. From Franzen, it goes down the hill. So we're proposing another one at our Turner Control Flow Facility that will then utilize the existing head between the Franzen Reservoir and Turner Control. You go to the next slide. I think it shows it better. Yeah. So it's a lot going on, but this is Franzen Reservoir. These are our transmission lines that come from our water treatment facility. The 2 locations that we're talking about are on the inlet to Franzen Reservoir and then downstream at our Turner Control Facility. And just to give you an idea, I mean, so our max water surface elevation at Garen Island is like 475-ish. Down here, we have a water surface elevation of 414. So you've got a nice head differential there. We don't really need to worry about the pressure here. We sometimes have to burn head as it comes into Turner as it is. So it's just wasted energy.
You keep saying head, you mean that like momentum or?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that like-
So the elevation differential, right? So the driving, so it's basically a difference in elevation from the water surface at Garen Island to the water surface at
So you're
Franklin
using the
Reservoir.
force of gravity
Yes.
in layman's
So
terms.
everything is coming down from gravity.
Yeah.
So that differential in the water surface elevation creates a driving head that can be used to turn a turbine. And then at Turner Control down right here, we actually have to kill a lot of head to meet.
Okay, so hold on, what does
Explain
that
how
mean?
Okay, sorry.
Why are we killing
Have to
things?
kill off
I
the
don't
momentum.
understand.
All right.
The water's flowing too fast.
It's too bad.
So if we let it go from Garen Island straight into town, then we would have so much pressure in our pipes that we'd be blowing pipes out, plumbing systems, things like that. So we try to maintain pressure in town of around 60 to 80 psi. If we were to not burn this excess head off, we would be in the range of what, 125, 130 psi. So to operate our system efficiently, we have to kill that or burn that excess head.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
So what we do right now is we have control valves, right? So think about it, it's like a ball valve that you would see, you know, like on a PVC pipe. So we crack it a little bit, right? So the Keith, you want to explain it? He's my process engineer.
So picture you're watering delicate flowers and you've got all this pressure coming out of your
These things are
nozzle, right?
Yes.
Sorry,
You turn your spigot a little bit down. I just did this yesterday, so I know. So you turn the spigot down and the pressure decreases so that your flowers survive being watered.
Yeah.
That's consistently killing head. And
Okay.
the head, if you want to do a little Newtonian physics, it's called potential energy. Basically, the higher water pressure is that potential energy. The higher you've got that gravity or that distance, you've got that energy. And the energy has to go somewhere. Either it's fiddle with a spigot, or what we're going to try to do is
Fiddle with
pull
the
off
spigot.
outlet
Fiddle
and
with
then
the spigot.
turn the turbine. Notice the hand motion, turn the turbine like that way, and then back in again. So that's how we're going to do it.
So basically right now, we're wasting that potential energy.
Correct.
That's correct.
And instead, we're gonna capture.
So
that
what we're gonna do is we're gonna
turn it into electricity.
fiddle with the spigots here and here.
Got it. See, now you're speaking our language, Jason. Fiddle with the spigot.
We're gonna fiddle with the spigots, and instead of just letting that excess energy just burn off, we're gonna capture it.
And turn it into electricity.
What I've learned here is that I'm gonna start using the term kill the head, please.
Yeah.
When I'm doing anything with the hose, can you kill the head a little bit? That's what I'm taking from this lesson.
And I'm gonna still say
Yeah.
fiddle with the spigot.
Yeah.
So in layman's terms, we're gonna fiddle with the spigots.
How much is this fiddling gonna generate?
Well, go back one. I just wanted to, this is Franzen Reservoir, so this is a proposed site. Go to the next one, yeah. Go to that, right. So, two sites, Turner Control, Franzen. So this is our average energy production per year. So 602,000 kilowatt hours and 858,000 kilowatt hours.
Oh,
Can you translate
Yeah.
that into like how many houses that runs or give us an idea?
It'd be about 150.
150 homes?
Yeah.
Per year.
I mean, yeah,
Well, for every
Okay.
hour.
yeah. So it's not necessarily all the time, but
Sure,
since they're
sure.
running about all the time, it
It might
kind
be
of would
more.
be.
Yeah, it would. So the regardless of how much water comes into town, right? So when we're running our max day demand, let's say 50 million gallons a day, or when we're, you know, in a time like we are right now, as water usage is starting to ramp up, but in the wintertime, when we're running around 22, 23 million gallons a day. The amount of water flowing isn't necessarily what generates this power, it's the pressure differential, right?
Right.
And because this is on our transmission line, all the water that's being used has to come through these 2 points.
mhm.
So it runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So it's just a constant
Gotcha.
churn. And then the way this is set up, if you can imagine, you've got a large transmission line that's 69 inches in diameter. We'll take a 24-inch pipe off of it, bypass it out of that main transmission line into our hydro generator and then back into the natural water stream, which allows us flexibility. If we have to do, we don't want anything that takes our transmission lines offline in the event that we need to do routine maintenance. So because it's set up as a bypass and this water is constantly flowing all day long, its normal course will be through the bypass into the generator and then back in. But if we have to do repairs, or actually even when we put the thing in, we don't have to take the transmission line off.
Wow. And what's this gonna cost?
All right, back up.
I had a feeling there was a.
So this is for the first site, $1.4 million. These incentives are just a rough idea. We're still working on exactly what the incentives are going to look like. Infrastructure Reduction Act. So there's money from the federal government, there's money from Department of Energy, there's money from Energy Trust. This less than 5 years comes into, are you familiar with net metering?
Yes.
Okay.
I have solar panels.
Okay, all right, so these incentives assume net metering, which makes this go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no.
Which appears to make this project, the payback, more attractive, but as Juliana has probably told you in previous meetings, net metering is not really the way to go because these are not energy intensive sites. So at this site, there's actually no power used except for the valve actuators, and then at Turner Control site, we have some SCADA panels and some light bulbs that can drive. What's that? SCADA? Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System. So it's the computer network that runs our entire.
Really needs much power there.
Yeah, so we don't. So a net metering at these sites doesn't make sense because we would actually be putting more power into the grid than what we're actually going to be using. And PGE at this point, these are both PGE sites. PGE doesn't have a program set up that really allows us to capture all this excess energy that we would be putting into the grid. So Juliana's working with PGE on, was it the green community incentives or?
Green community tariff, and we talked about that at the March meeting.
Yeah. And I think your previous council meeting, the last one in April, March, for the grant?
No, that was the council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one was the one.
So we
where,
brought together a proposal that was it was through Oregon Department of Energy, and what we're looking for is to get money to fully fund the design of this. So the idea is that we will design these two sites, have them basically shovel ready, and then shop it for as the incentives start to come online, and we'll be shopping it as a project that's ready to go.
Great.
So that is cost of one reservoir.
And then here, similar costs, less than 30-year payback, assuming net metering. But these, the incentives, and we've talked to the Energy Trust, and they basically said that get this thing ready, and we will make sure that you have a payback period of less than 5 years for the project.
And this would all be coming out of our
Utility
fund.
Correct. Right. So the idea is that we would, the utility fund would, we would put up the money for the capital costs, and then we would use the incentives to offset those capital costs. They would come back into the utility fund. So you're talking about an investment of a few $100,000 for something that's still pretty unique. Mm-hmm. City of Hillsborough has one, a similar situation. It's at right across the parking lot from Ron Tonkin Field. Theirs is nice because it's in a public area, and they have signage, and all the lights at the ballpark are powered by this generation, or this hydropower generation. Unfortunately, because where these sites are, we're not going to really be able to. I mean, we can take tours and show people, but it's going to be behind fences and in a very sensitive area. So it's not the type that we can really advertise and show off. Yeah, but it will be something that we can point to as for our climate action plan. I mean, this goes with our our solar power generation that we have. This is just another feather in that hat of renewable energy.
What about some of our other reservoirs that we have, like over in West Salem, South Salem? We have we have other reservoir sites. Is there potential there?
No, not really.
Why?
Because we don't have the spigot to fiddle with. Okay. We're not trying to burn head once we get into town.
Okay.
So now we're basically we're on system pressure, right? So we're in that 60 to 80 PSI range and so we don't have any excess energy to burn off. We have looked at our ASR wells because sorry. I know my
I
acronyms.
know it's gonna be super smart, so I'm ready.
Aquifer storage and recovery system, right? So in the wintertime, we put our water into an underground aquifer, and in the summertime during peak demands, we pull that water out to supplement the water that's coming from our Heron Island water treatment plant. When we're injecting water, it's system pressure that's feeding these injection sites, and then the water, imagine, just goes down a hole. So there is potential then to capture that excess energy as it goes down into the aquifer. A system like this doesn't really make sense because it doesn't run year round, and so it's only running about 3 months out of the year. So investing in a system like this isn't really the way to go. So what we're looking at are regenerative drives on our pumps. So basically, they spin backwards as the water goes down, and that generates power. It's really small scale compared to what we're talking about at transient and generator control, but there is another potential site. The incentives on that one, because it doesn't run that much, really make it about a 15 or so year payback period. And we're still working on possible incentives to see if we can make that one a reality as well.
I'd just like to add a piece of note. So one of the things that we really are excited about for this project is it doesn't require any energy to run. It's what they consider a black start. So in catastrophic grid failure scenarios, a black start system would be able to generate energy without any energy input. And that is uncommon for a lot of renewables. It's normally relied on for fossil fuels. So both solar and wind require some electricity on the grid to be operated. So,
and this one, because we're just harnessing the power of water flowing in a pipe. Right? So once it leaves Heron Island, it's, gravity and nature take over. And so this will generate its own self-sufficient power to power any of the controls that we need to operate the system, as well as excess energy that goes to the grid.
That's great. Any other questions? Councilor Gonzalez, you good?
All good, great news, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else on this one?
No, we just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Yeah.
Let you know what we're working on, and hopefully, maybe like a year from now, we'll come back with something to show.
All right. Thank you. Now we'll go on to strategy CM01, which is the environmental screening tool to identify Salem neighborhoods disproportionately burdened by and vulnerable to environmental hazards. Michael, is it Kuehler? Coiler. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Public Health.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Michael Coiler, and I'm with Marion County Public Health. I specifically work on environmental health resiliency work. So more around trying to improve resiliency to different types of environmental hazards and threats, such as heat waves, ice storms, poor air quality, what have you. So we have been meaning to just kind of discuss some potential connection points between the work that Juliana does and the work that I do. And one of the things that we discussed was kind of providing some very more specific Salem level data on some surveillance information that I'm going to explain in just a second. So.
And I'd love to just point out that in addition to the work that he did in creating these reports, he actually worked with Polk County to pull some of their specific data, so then we have a more holistic view of the city of Salem.
Yeah, great. The information I'm going to be sharing is in reference to these data reports that we released. They are Marion County specific, but the information on the slides are specific to Salem areas of codes.
And those reports were also hyperlinked in the agenda for today.
So I'm just going to give a brief overview of what my program is, and then also review the data for extreme heat, extreme cold, and then air quality, and what we foresee the next steps would be. So go ahead. Okay, so environmental health resiliency program for us, the Oregon Health Authority does have a public health modernization goal where we want to try and protect communities from environmental health threats through public health interventions to support equitable climate adaptation. So the funding we're getting for this comes from OHA, and it is specific to the adaptation side or the resiliency side. By June of 2025, we'll have a plan. We're currently in the assessment phase, which is we're contracted with William University to try and understand how different environmental hazards and threats are currently affecting people who live in both counties, Marion and Polk. It's a dual county effort. And then that's more on the qualitative side, just giving us information, people sharing their stories, really more kind of understanding how it's really affecting different communities in a more nuanced way. And then the health data reports, such as the ones I just passed out, and the information I'll share goes over more of the numbers. And then that will lead to strategic planning. We have a community health assessment, which we're currently in the middle of, that this information will feed into. And then regarding communication and implementation will be the next step. So again, we'll be focusing on the assessment part of this discussion. Anytime you do see a QR code that does have, just takes you to our website where you can find reports too. So regarding program overviews, when we talk about these different hazards, go ahead. We're talking about the potential hazards. Some of them I just mentioned. The reports that we have are from Oregon Essence. It's a real-time data and surveillance program. I can never fully remember. It's electronic surveillance system for the early notification of community-based epidemics. So quite a mouthful. It is real-time information that we get from from emergency department and urgent care as a public health department. So extreme heat, extreme cold, and air quality were ones that we were able to tease information from. That's why we have that information on there. And our goal is to, this is not an exclusive list, just ones that we've identified, try and improve the resiliency of various vulnerable populations to these hazards and threats. And those, some of those populations are highlighted there. So the data information that we pulled into these reports includes National Weather Service data, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration data, EPA information for the Air Quality Index, population and census data, so that way we can compare some of the areas across zip codes, and then health data, which is the essence I was just explaining. Again, those do, go ahead. Those do feed into those reports, which you can find on our website. Before I get launched into the actual data itself, I just wanted to discuss some of the limitations of it. It is zip code based, so when I say Salem, I'm talking about Salem area zip codes. It does go outside of the city limits. That is just that's the lowest we can get to geographically in order to analyze it, but it still provides an opportunity to take a look at it. It is location based on residence, so it's not necessarily where someone might have encountered, let's say, a heat related illness or cold related illness. It's based off of where they live. The data is also based on individual visits, so to protect people's identity, it's just individual visits. So one person could go multiple times within the time frame we'll be discussing. You must, in order to get counted, you do have to have gone to an emergency department or urgent care. So there are people who could potentially get missed from some of this information, and some of the data is suppressed due to low numbers. Like Juliana mentioned, we were able to get some information from Polk County, which kudos to them for being able to share some of that. However, their data is limited to year and age. Each county has our own access to this information, and so sharing it can be a little tricky. Okay, so first we'll focus on extreme heats. In the city of Salem over the past 50 years, this is a graph showing days for each year over at 90 degrees or over. You can see that 40 years ago, for a 5-year average between 1979 to 1983, there were 12 days on average. If you fast forward to the last 5 years, go ahead. That has increased to 25. So we are seeing an increase based off of a 40-year time frame. When we do talk about how heat does affect our health, we want to use the National Weather Service's heat index. And the heat index is basically a combination of air temperature and relative humidity, and how that feels to the human body and shape. So when, let's say, it is a 90-degree heat index day, that goes up to an extreme caution for what could happen. And I know Oregon OSHA does follow the heat index for kind of some of those regulations for breaks and things like that. Now, one thing I will say about the heat index is that you can feel, let's say if there's no breeze and you're in the direct sunlight, that can be 10 to 15 degrees hotter feeling to the human body. So, for instance, if you were out in the sun like I was yesterday, even though it was 77, it definitely felt hotter than that. Yeah. With that being said, it just kind of depends on what you're doing and what your exposure is when you're in the heat.
And vulnerable populations can feel it at lower temperatures due to other conditions that they are.
Correct. So let's say if you have a chronic condition, you're taking a medication, that might have some counteracting components. I'll get into age a little bit, but that also affects our ability to deal with heat too. So this breaks down what the heat index looks like over the last 5 years. I'll be focusing on just the 5-year time frame because we really just want to focus more on what's currently going on, but also the information from Oregon Essence is a little bit better over the last 5 years. So you can see that on the left, those are the number of days in each heat index category from the National Weather Service, and then on the right you'll see what that information looks like.
That's remarkable how it, like, the graphs are exactly
yeah.
the same in terms of days between 90 and 102.
Mhm.
Like, that's crazy.
And you can see there was a spike in 2021, obviously during the heat wave and heat dome. Even though last year we had less days between 90 and 102 heat index, we still had a large number of 80 to 90 range. And so that just goes to show us that there seems to be a connection even in that lower range too. So go ahead. The average number in that 5-year time frame is 300, or the total number is 336, and the average is a little over 67 per year. The information we have around deaths in Marion County in a 4-year time frame, we don't have 2023 yet, but there were 11 deaths caused by heat that we know of. Okay, so this is showing a comparison. This is where we take in census data to be able to get a good idea of how this is affecting, again, Salem area zip codes. This does include 97304, so the West Salem side. The city of Salem does have a slightly lower incidence rate per 100,000 people than Marion County does, but it does track very similarly in terms of the rate, and then a little bit higher than the state average. So with this Essence information, we were able to also break down how people, when they went to the emergency department, what the heat index was for that day. And we can see that when you'll notice on the graph that as we get into kind of the 90 degree range, that incidence of heat-related illness goes up. And then as it continues to climb, the cases go up. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? You know, it's information that we already know, but just kind of showing that graphically. Regarding locations, so this is where we're able to kind of compare it. This is a comparison to the entire county, but you can see where higher rates of heat-related illness are occurring. And in the table on the left, we put what the total number is for each zip code within that 5-year time frame between 2019 to 2023. And so you can see that 97301, that zip code does have a higher rate of heat-related illness, and kind of what that compares to the surrounding areas.
Any thoughts on why that is? Because it's so different than some of the surrounding areas.
It's probably a lot of different things. It is covering the downtown Salem area, so there could be some heat island effects. Wherever there's more kind of impervious surfaces such as concrete and lower, let's say, tree canopy, you'll see higher rates. So for instance, up the canyon, those rates are really low because there's a lot more shade. However, that might change over time given the fires. Yeah, kind of not in this graph, but we do have some kind of it's satellite imagery of heat anomalies compared to tree canopy, and you can tell it's pretty cut and dry. You know, wherever there's higher tree canopy, there's a lower heat than areas that, you know, have more concrete and less tree canopy. That's just one example. It could also be that there are other populations who live in these areas might be more vulnerable as well.
There's a concentration of homeless folks down there, sheltered people.
Yeah, and we were able to tease information about that out as well. So I think that's actually the next slide. Oh, okay.
Not quite yet.
Okay, but it's coming up. Okay, so I was able to get 97304 information regarding age. However, for all of the other Salem area zip codes, you can see a pretty distinct trend upwards as people do age. The rate of heat-related illness does increase. And so that just gives us more information as to which populations we might want to have more focus on in terms of initiatives. Here's the homeless or persons experiencing homelessness information. So Essence does have in some of the, let's say, triage notes and some of the IDC codes, either a person will self-identify as being unhoused or unsheltered, or the doctor, physician, nurse might identify them and put it in the notes. So most likely this is an undercount, but it does give us an idea that of those who have been identified as being unhoused, 10% of heat-related illness was among that population. Now, given the context of point in time information, we know that those are likely undercounts too, but that does show a pretty drastic increase for that specific population.
Well, and given the percentage of people who are unsheltered compared to our overall population, that's a huge number. I guess the numbers quite low in terms of the overall population.
Yeah, and when we get to cold-related illness, this will really come out, and I'll break that down in more detail.
Well, and also that makes me, I'm just intrigued because of the age situation and our increasing senior population that's becoming unhoused.
Right.
And the issue with age and heat.
Yeah.
Those are pounding in my brain right now.
Yeah, and multiple vulnerabilities can definitely compound for sure. So go ahead to the next slide. There is, do you mind clicking on that link? So the Oregon Department of Energy has a dashboard that provides a heat vulnerability index and a cooling needs study. If you do click on that interactive heat vulnerability index, so go ahead and scroll down a little bit, right there, that will kind of break down on the census tract level where some of the heat vulnerabilities are. So in the top left, click on switch to tract level, and then you can see how the Oregon Department of Energy has broken this down. This is specific to heat-related illness, or how it specific to health. So with this information, if there are, again, initiatives in the future, those, if you were to try and, I would say, apply for funding, this type of information would be helpful in applications.
And again, this is resident-based, not internet-based.
For Essence, yes.
I mean, this data.
This information is a vulnerability index, so it's capturing exposure, adaptive capacity, and sensitivity.
But I mean, is it based on where you live or where the event occurred?
That's based off of where you live.
Okay.
And it is. It doesn't factor in actual heat-related illness. This tool is more of just what does vulnerability look like in these areas.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Next slide. And then there's some other resources I wanted to point out. The National Weather Service has a heat risk prototype tool, which is really cool. The information, or the picture on the left, shows an example of that. It does have information from both the National Weather Service and CDC, and is broken down in I think smaller than zip code information. It just shows where some heat related issues might be occurring in different areas. And then some other resources. The OSHA Heat Safety app is a great tool. I think it's down currently, which is kind of an issue given our current mini heat wave, I guess, just higher heat this weekend. But that is a great tool for employers, and then also again, our resiliency page. Okay, so next, Oregon, or the Oregon Essence program also has cold related illnesses. This might be hypothermia, frostbite, different things like that. And so go ahead, next slide. This information is specific to cold related illness. So similar to heat, with cold, we took a look at 30 degrees or lower, so basically freezing point, and over the last 50 years. And for that 5-year time frame, 40 years ago, it was 64 average per year, and now it's 54. So we do see that 30-degree days are decreasing. However, that doesn't necessarily factor in storms or other types of events that might cause a spike in cold-related illness. So in the city of Salem, you can see numbers in terms of what it looks like for 40 degrees in different categories and below. And then this is what that looks like for cold-related illness. There seems to be an upward trend regardless of what the cold temperature days look like. So it's kind of telling us that there's some sort of other consideration that might be causing more cold-related illnesses than just the cold itself. For the last 5 years, there have been a little over 1,000 cases and 208 on average per year. And Marion County has had 7 deaths that we know of between 2019 and 2022. Here's where you can see the comparison. The state is at a 48.2 per 100,000 average over the last 5 years. Marion County is quite a bit higher than that and continues to increase. And Salem follows a similar trend, just at a higher rate as well. I'll get into why that would be the case in just a second. Okay, so when we look at age as well, we did have to suppress some of Polk County's information from 97304, but combined, we can see that 45 to 64 has the highest amount of people, or sorry, the highest rate of people experiencing cold-related illness. That is, well, from what we can tell, at least on the county-wide level, that is mainly due to people experiencing homelessness. And so there's still a similar trend of age with temperature. Okay, so with Salem area zip codes, about 40%, so 426 total in the last 5 years have been identified as experiencing homelessness. And you can see a breakdown per year of what that percentage looks like for those Salem area zip codes. And that's specific to just on the Marion County side. We weren't able to analyze Polk County's information in this way. But it does show a pretty high disparity, especially when you compare this to heat-related illness, that cold is affecting our homeless population more so. And then when we look at cold-related illnesses, you can see a breakdown by zip code as well. And then just for sake of kind of painting the picture of how this is affecting our homeless population, we have a percentage of what that looks like for the identified zip code. And so you can tell that for 97301, it's drastically higher rate. However, because 97301 has a lot of services and shelters for people experiencing homelessness, that's where people are saying their area of residence is. Okay? So, yeah.
On the last slide, why is I guess, can you talk to me about why the folks who are not identified as unhoused, why is that rate growing so as well, or are there thoughts to that?
If you were to, let's say, take away the identified homeless, it is increasing. In regards to why that might be happening, I'm not sure. I think that would be information that would kind of start to present itself in our environmental scan we're doing with Willamette, and would really just need more kind of qualitative information, just people telling us, what the issue is. And so we're hopeful that with the environmental scan, we'll get more information from that. But I don't want to speculate until we get more kind of confirmation. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. And then the last piece that I wanted to go over is air quality. Am I doing okay on time?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we also looked at air quality, and air quality, we can take a look at different air quality index from the EPA and from DEQ. And the EPA allows us to break down air quality for based off of these different values that they set. So in a moderate setting, it's still fairly low risk, but there is some risk for some populations. So we decided to keep moderate in kind of our tracking and our graphs. And then you can see as we go down, those are the different levels of concern health-wise.
So before you leave that slide, for us, is the issue more particulate pollution or ozone?
For each day that we have data on, it does, and this is publicly available information, it does state what the main particulate is of concern. Surprisingly, during colder months, PM 2.5 is higher, is the particulate that's most pollutant. And then ozone during the warmer months is higher. However, different things like wildfires or smoke coming in might affect that. So
cold weather PM is probably correlating to people using
wood stoves. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so that's the same graph. I just wanted to show in comparison to what it looks like for Salem area zip codes. You can see per year, the rates are fairly similar. This is air quality related respiratory illness. And so go ahead and click the next thing. That's a whole large group of different types of illnesses that air quality can exacerbate. So the rate or the number is really high. What I would say the main thing to keep an eye on is the difference between those numbers. And that difference does track fairly similarly to what the air quality rates look like. And then, yeah, there's a total of 58,000 cases that kind of group into air quality related respiratory illnesses. And that averages a little over, 11,600 about per year. Okay, so for Salem area zip codes, this does include Polk County as well. You can see that the rate of air quality related respiratory illnesses is higher than Marion County, but tracks similarly to the state in terms of 5-year average. However, the rate differences do track similarly to the county as well. Here you can see age. There is actually 0 to 4 has the highest rate amongst, at least on the Marion County side, I know for sure. I'm not sure about Polk, but it does have the highest rate of among children or before adults. And then obviously that trend increases to 65. Then we can see a breakdown of what this looks like per area. So what the rates look like, 97301 does have the highest rate, and then 97305 also has a high rate for Salem area zip codes. With this information on the Marion County side, we're able to run a few extra, what Essence calls queries, or breaking down information in different ways. And so we were able to look at asthma information. And for 2022 and 2023, we've had a higher number of asthma related cases. And then next, for pollen, there was a large jump in pollen allergy related emergency department urgent care visits. And I'm sure everyone, if you have allergies, you probably felt it a little bit more last year. And then smoke, obviously during the Santiam wildfires, there was a higher spike. And again, this is for residents of Salem. Okay, so next steps on our end, what we kind of envision how this work is going is currently we're in the middle of an environmental scan with Willamette University. That's just a fancy way of saying it's a group of different types of assessments. We've been interviewing different community leaders and stakeholders who either work in trying to prevent hazard threats to people's health, harmful effects of people's health, or organizations that work with or for vulnerable populations. We had a community survey that went out. They've been doing some focus groups, and they've been also putting together some research studies and a plan library for us to really give us a good idea of where our community's at across Marion and Polk County. And then a lot of that will be data, stories, information about what our community's strengths and weaknesses are, and opportunities for the future. And then on our end, next step planning is we've been kind of concluding some improvements to our surveillance, response, and communication around Legionella and vector-borne illness internally with the public health department. We've also been working on some environmental hazards and improvement planning. This would be basically once our environmental scan is done, it'll give us a good idea of, okay, here's a roadmap. This is the direction we want to take everything. And that will present some potential opportunities for collaboration with different organizations. And then we're also working on a communication plan as we prepare for some of these environmental hazards that might occur and cause some poor health outcomes. So with heat coming up, that's the first one on our docket for communication. Any questions?
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have heard that other states are starting to do really robust public health outreach to their communities on these topics. I'm guessing that that's going to be part of your plan when you move forward after your scan is done.
Yeah, I'm kind of envisioning that the communications would be tiered. So when there are, let's say, a heat wave or something coming up, we would increase whatever level of communication we have. So that way more people are aware and where they can find resources for alleviating some of those things, or alleviating the stress that someone might be impacted by from. Again, I'm using heat as an example right now, but
Can you talk to us about how that would look in our communities, specifically with our unsheltered population? How you would do that communication?
I think making sure we're communicating to organizations that frequently work with our unhoused neighbors, and
What would that look like, though?
It's hard for me to really envision what that might be like before we have some of the results from our environmental scan. But it might go out and kind of like an alert directly to those organizations to try and help spread that level of information. I'd say that's one potential topic, but there might be other forms of outreach that get identified through the scan.
I'm wondering how the city can participate in the planning and how we can be a partner to the county. I think about the grant that we got to plant trees, right? And that's a big part of this. Obviously, that's a long-term goal. But I know that we would be a partner in things like a heat dome with our library being open, right? Or things like that, right?
Yeah.
In ways that we can help communicate to the community. So I don't know if that's a question so much as just a statement that I really hope that the city has a seat at the table when we're having these conversations.
Yeah, I think collaboration is going to be really important in that process. The kind of tactics moving forward will definitely be informed from this large scale assessment that we're gaining a lot of community input on. And my position, I really see it as an opportunity to kind of coordinate and collaborate with different organizations. We've connected a few times in regards to some of the initiatives that Juliana's been working on and where there might be some overlap. And ultimately, if there are incentives trying to bring more of those into our community, because like if you were to look at that heat vulnerability index tool, or from the Oregon Department of Energy, right? They highlight that Marion County does have a higher vulnerability than most counties. So let's bring all these tools together to basically show, okay, we need to try and get more resources here because the need is there. And so that might be future funding, that might be just more collaboration across efforts. So that way we're not duplicating efforts and we're just strengthening the work that various organizations. So that's kind of how I kind of see things going, but the environmental scan will be very informative for us. So.
And one of the projects that we're working on for next year is the urban heat island mapping. And so Michael's been really instrumental in helping formulate who would be collaborating on that regional approach. And that was briefly presented on at the March.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Juliana, that's the last item on our agenda, but I was hoping you could just maybe give us just a quick preview of things you're working on, what we can look forward to in the future, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So some progress, we applied for the in-pipe hydro on Friday, actually, so very, very shortly. We expect to hear back in September on how that effort went. We have the energy efficiency conservation block grant that was applied for April 10th, and we should be hearing back 90 days from that submission. And for that, we have been working on the RFP for the energy master plan. It went out to bid and we got proposals back on April 17th. The committee reviewed those and hope to have something. So those are some of the bigger projects. Some of the smaller projects, looking at what partners we can engage with specifically for resiliency. There are a couple resiliency grants out. And so I've been working with Gretchen and seeing what our vulnerable populations need and who we could collaborate with in terms of, so just to take a step back real quick, the Resiliency Hub can work through government. We talked about how that might look and what resources we might leverage. But we don't have a lot of excess resources, and so that might not be the best way forward. Another reason why government might not be the best reason is because vulnerable populations aren't always as open to accessing government resources. So we were looking at what community organizations we could help support in their efforts to creating resiliency hubs. So to still support our community members, but have it through a venue that our vulnerable populations would feel more comfortable at. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking on that right now. There were, I believe, 3 Resiliency Hub grants that were open recently, and we sent that out to Eunice helped provide some insights as to what groups might be interested. So that went out to those groups. We heard back from a couple on their interest and just supporting them moving forward on that. So
what makes a resiliency hub resilient?
Great question. I'm so sorry I didn't explain that first. So Resilience Hub is a location where people can get resources in extreme events. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a weather event. Climate change is likely to cause a lot of extreme events, and not all of them are weather. So it's a location, first and foremost, and then it would provide resources. So some of those resources are tied into the resiliency of that location. So some of it would be having solar panels or some way of generating power in events of power grid failures. Some of it would have resilient water infrastructure, so people would be able to have drinking water, be able to bathe, things like that. And then part of it is just having a place where resources can be picked up by people. So that's kind of what we're looking for. The different vulnerable populations, pretty similar to Michael's list actually, was the one that Gretchen and I came up with. And so we were kind of communicating how do we help support, you know, our maybe elderly community members? What specific community resources do we have? And so we were talking, what if that looks like partnering with elderly care facilities? They have commercial kitchens. They have often like bigger spaces to provide more resources. And when we're looking at cold or hot related illness, some of that might be, and this is speculation, so I'm doing it since Michael didn't feel comfortable with it. So people who are on lower income, which elderly populations are more likely to be, they might not have the funds to expend on their heating and cooling bills. And so they might have more vulnerability to those. So we were trying to figure out how we could help get them either resources in their own homes or to a community resource that they felt comfortable going. So,
Question.
Yes.
You were talking about what And I guess what I was hearing in my head is that sounds to me like Center 50 Plus. That sounds to me like the public library. That sounds to me like our public schools, right? Our fire stations, all of those locations. I know some of them don't all have commercial kitchens or whatnot, but they all serve a purpose. So, but it sounds to me like staff are taking a different route and going through like our nonprofits. Is that what I'm hearing?
We did have some inquiries internally about if some locations would work. The staff capacity at those would be limited, and so that wouldn't necessarily be the best option for those. And we did reach out to other divisions on that, and that was kind of the limiting factor.
Keeps coming back.
Okay, any other questions for Juliana?
No, great information today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, we're adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you.